As I said to you upstairs, we probably should have painted a target on your back, because the one common denominator that came out of this whole conference is content is king. And when we're in the film business, that's been the constant refrain. We need good content in 3D. Now you have been migrating into 3D. You started out as a traditional filmmaker, probably went through film and then digital and now into 3D. Tell me something about that process. What drew you to 3D? And then maybe we can talk about some of the upsides and the challenges.
Yeah, it's actually probably not as gentle as you just laid it out, that kind of beautiful gradual thing. It was actually, I am the dinosaur over here. I cut Lady in the Water on film, and I had to go get Spielberg's people to come help me because there wasn't anybody that knew how to cut on film anymore. And it was the last, I was worried that we needed to go get, stock up on film before it's all gone. I'm that guy. I have an email, I literally think I'm joking, I have an email, I've checked it 7 times in my life. And it's, I use the computer as a typewriter, basically. And it's just technology. It's funny because technology doesn't really, that's not the thing that gets me going. When I see all the people that inspired me, George Lucas and Spielberg and Peter Jackson and James Cameron, they are just also techie savvy. It's the thing that they get excited about, and I'm more like the dinner table scene really gets me excited about, the dialogue. So this is, just that I'm sitting here is some alternate bizarro universe. It's incredible. My wife gets on me a bunch because I don't know how to work anything. And how does this, where's the, we just got a new computer for me. I literally asked my daughter, where's the on button? So she's like, it's to the right. No joke, this is how I am. But what was really interesting was I'm always about taking huge leaps and never doing anything safe. Making sure, and I tell this to my kids and everybody that'll listen to me, is you should do anything that scares you. That's what you should do. And this terrified me. So I said yes to doing Airbender, and then we can talk at length about how I came to do the process of 3D.
Well, in a way, you're a perfect person to have here at the moment, because sure, James Cameron and Spielberg, they have access to all of the technology, and they are technology advocates. But the real success of 3D in films is going to be when the relatively mainstream director adapts it and uses it as a tool. And I've heard this many times this week, that if people don't do the right preparation, they don't have the right frame of mind going into it, they'll put out what is effectively bad 3D films. And people will go into the movies as they do today, and they say, I didn't like that one, but I'll go see the next one. 3D will not be that. They'll go in, they'll see a 3D movie, and they'll blame it on 3D if they don't like it. So how did you make that transition? Not being someone who's that devoted, say, to the technology of it.
Right.
What about as a tool to telling a story?
Would this be an appropriate time to talk about how I chose 3D for Airbender? It was always a constant discussion at the time, because movies like Airbender take 3 years to make, and in the evolution of 3D, that's a long time ago. And so when we were talking about doing it, and they were talking to me and said, shall we think about shooting this in 3D? And I was thinking about a movie with all children, and I'm a very performance-driven director, and I do very, very long takes, and I don't really do coverage. So it's all about capturing something right there. When I see it in the 12-year-old's eyes as I'm explaining it to them, and then I see it go click, I will literally scream to the crew, drop everything you're doing, roll sound. I don't care what you're doing, tweaking, whatever you're doing, stop. And everyone hears the urgency in my voice, and everyone just gets completely connected by an umbilical cord to this little boy who's at the right place. And the whole tenor of the set changes, and we roll sound, and hopefully we capture something truthful in that moment. And if I had to do an extra step at that moment, that felt to me difficult to manage. And again, that's just fears of mine, And so at that time, I was I was worried about the burden that it would add to the kind of organic process of trying to get performances from. Some of them had never acted before too, the kids in this movie. So it's a difficult thing to get organic performances that are truthful, and so that was my big concern. So I tabled it with Paramount, and I said, you know what, I don't think I'm ready to make that decision, but we'll continue to discuss and do tests on it as we went. And I think ultimately, as I put the film together, the main reason that I decided to do it was a creative one. I'm always going to come from a sense of storytelling integrity. If it even smells like I'm selling out in any way, that will turn me off. Even if it's the right creative choice, I will go the other way. And that's something that people, it's a fault of mine. Like I will go the other way too strongly to avoid that feeling. And for me, I kept on having this feeling like it was going to do something to the movie's perception. But when I'm making the movie, one thing that became really interesting for me is that I thought, I go, wow, this is a fantasy world. The rules are completely different, and the tone of the movie, and in our particular case, the tone of the movie, the show has like, the kids all talk like contemporary kids, like they're mall kids, but they're in another world. That's the show's tone, and it's an unusual tone, and in an animated show, you can get away with that. And I was like, I need something that will tell the audience, suspend your disbelief in a way. This is a fantasy world. I need you to take all your things about grounding and the things you bring, that I bring normally to a movie, and take that away. And so, as I was editing it and we were doing these tests, the creative decision came from that particular moment when I was quiet and I thought about, will this help me make the audience suspend disbelief in the way that they do with animated movies? I mean, there's a reason that animated movies are always the best reviewed movies of the year. It's that huge suspension of disbelief that goes on. So a little girl like in Up, which I love by the way, and can say, "You want to join my club?" Like that, and that seems like we all giggle. But if a little girl did that in my movie, in live action, "You want to join my club?" You would look at her like, what's wrong with her? There's no girl that talks like this, right? But there's an incredible suspension of disbelief that goes on. And I wanted some of that for our movie. I wanted you to almost like something between an animated movie and a live action movie, and I was hoping for that effect. So that was the reason that creatively I said, let's go. It didn't come without huge hesitation.
You didn't shoot it in 3D?
No, I didn't. And I think that you're going to probably ask me this, but if I had to do it over again, I would have wished I had come to the decision much, much earlier and learned everything much, much earlier, so I could have incorporated it. And there's a huge amount, as we'll talk about, as a storyteller, that I've learned. I mean, I'm always coming from the psychology of what we're doing. What does a color mean? And what is the framing mean? What does a 75mm lens versus a 25mm lens do to an audience member? When the dolly's coming at you like this, does that mean that creates conviction? If it's coming from an angle, what does that convey? All of those things, I assign attributes to that. And obviously with 3D, it's a huge world that changes the dynamics entirely. And we'll go through each of those things, but learning about that, I wish I had learned it and then done the movie so I could incorporate it. But it just so happened at Last Airbender landed in the evolution of 3D where it landed. If it landed a year later, I probably would have incorporated it much, much earlier. But back when it was 30-some years ago, that's where it landed, and I didn't have quite the comfort.
Was that Paramount's idea that you consider going 3D?
Well, the world kept changing as we were making the movie, and obviously the movies that came out and became successful and all that stuff kept affecting our interest in it. And then, as I said, as I was editing it and realizing what the tone of the movie is, it became a prevalent question for me. And I remember it was on, and at the end of the day, I went to the movies to see 2 movies. I'm trying to think whether I should mention them or not. And I saw one movie which was always intended to be in 3D, and it's a good movie. It's actually it's a really good movie, I'd say. And the 3D it bothered me because it was lathered on in a way that was undisciplined, and so I knew I was enjoying the movie, but I was kind of I could tell when I was wincing and when I was this, and I was noticing the pans were blurred, and I was noticing things. This was an intended movie, and then so I actually called up Paramount and I left a message saying, I don't know, I'm wavering now. And then the next day I saw Alice in Wonderland, and you know, I'm a big Tim Burton fan for him holding to his guns and creatively since his Disney days all the way till now. And it was just something, you know, it matched the movie. It matched the tenor of the movie and the discipline in which it was used. It was correct. It was correct for me, and it was inspiring to me. And so then I called back and said, "Scratch that last message. Let's go for it."
When you approach a film, as you have in the past, you know you're going to tell a story, and you're talking about angles and camera, things like that. They're all techniques of telling the story as you see it and feel it. Do you sense that 3D can also be now a tool that if you're authoring the film in 3D, where not every single shot has to be 3D, but there are shots that you may want to use the benefits of 3D. Do you see that as a creative option now, that when you're telling a story, 3D can be an applicable tool for you?
Well, you know what, I'm going to be, you know, perfectly honest when we're talking here today about the pros and the cons of it all. It's definitely not you know, the problem with it, as I see it, is the glasses. And it is not a tool. It's not a tool like 5.1 sound. It's not a tool like music. It is a definition of what you're coming to see, what your expectations are. This is all about expectations. Back in the day when you didn't have $70 million campaigns telling us what the movie was going to be, you didn't know what you were coming to see. And the movie just revealed itself, and you could have such a unique and personal experience. And so it's something we're burdened with already, the expectations of each movie, you know. And as an original filmmaker, and I make my living on that, and my instincts are to do something very new each and every time, it's a burden, because they're coming with a huge expectation that's clearly incorrect, because I'm doing something new. And the glasses create it's not right now, I'm finding it hard to see it as a tool and not the definition of what you're coming to see. As soon as those glasses go on, I have I have a huge expectation of the style of what I'm going to see, the experience that I'm going to have. So it's a tricky thing, you know. Like when I was learning about 3D, and then I learned about the screen plane, and then the negative space, and and going deeper into the screen and the depth and all that stuff. Of course, my instinct immediately was go depth 99% of the time, because this whole kind of coming out business is not how I tell film, tell stories. I'm a very quiet guy. I tell everything very quiet, and I would love to use 3D and so for example, do a movie where it's not really used except for 4 moments in the movie, and then suddenly you get the audience screaming. We did the Devil premiere last night, and there was a moment where the entire audience screamed for 4.5 seconds together. It was incredible. I would love a movie where I could do that 4 times with 3D, and I didn't use it until that moment. It's impossible if you're wearing the glasses the whole time, because that's saying to you what movie you're seeing. If you watch a half an hour where nothing's going on, that's saliently 3D, their expectation of it coming out over. Right now the definition is so nascent. It's so from my aunt who called me up and said, "Why didn't all the 3D come out at you more?" From Airbender, and I was like, well, I'm trying to explain depth versus negative space to my aunt in Buffalo, and I'm like, this is the problem. It's too nascent. The definition of expectation is going and what? So how does that leave it for a filmmaker like me, whose instincts are completely the opposite, but I could use 3D in really powerful, surprising ways if I had the art of surprise on my side, that I could do that. But as soon as you do this, it's so defining. Right now, it's not subservient to the story, and that is the problem.
But if you go back to when I was born, people seeing black and white movies, or they see films without sound. It took a while for them to get kind of, how do you put sound into that? Same thing with color. I remember in the 50s when I was going to movies, if it was a really important movie, we would think to ourselves, gee, I hope it's in black and white, because that's a technique that we grew up with, we believed in, and then color came along, and now you don't even think about it. Kids grow up today, it's color, they don't even think about it. So aren't we at a stage in 3D where maybe it changes the expectation, but the director can now change the delivery, so to speak. Okay, you got a higher expectation, puts more pressure on me to give you more, and I'm going to figure out how to do that.
Well, you know, I'm not sure that's the correct analogy, because I've obviously thought about this a lot. You know, there's certain stories where the story can overpower the 3D part of it in the appropriate way. It can almost become a tool in the largest of movies, right? And where there's so much going on. Let's say, I don't know if they're doing the next Pirates in 3D. Are they doing the next Pirates in 3D?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like that one, it's getting swallowed, and it's becoming a tool within the overall thing. It's not, and it matches the tone of the storytelling style. It's a big, big, broad, farcical. You know, Johnny's acting is 3D. It's like it's all that makes sense to me. It's in there, but it's such a strong flavor, 3D, that it'll overwhelm. Right now, I'm saying in terms of expectations, not actually the movie-going experience, which is a totally separate thing, by the way. Because I believe in the depth of 3D. I believe in that sense of immersion that comes from it. I'm just telling us the burden that we all have together about expectations that come along with the 3D thing. By the way, we're going to go way off on a tangent here, but you brought it up. Just for a second, which is like, one of the great things Walter Murch talked about, the concept of incompleteness, which it's like religion to me, this idea of incompleteness, that as storytellers we take it to a certain level and then the audience finishes the sentence for us. And black and white films did this for us automatically. They didn't fill it in. We filled in the colors, we filled everything. And so what they were feeling was actually real. That those were more powerful experiences because you were invested more. But when we defined red, when we defined what it was like, what the color of this carpet is, it almost took away our involvement a little bit. And Walter Murch has been, it's an interesting statement he was saying about how we can finish.
Where did you get your learning for this? If you have trouble turning a computer on and off, this is a fairly heavy burden in comparison. I know Sony's mentioned, a couple of companies you mentioned, that they're doing a lot to help the local creative community learn 3D as both a profession for storytelling and also for the technology. Where have you gained all this knowledge?
It was just studying and asking a million questions to these guys, the Stereo D guys, and I guess part of it's the Indian immigrant thing of studying hard, and you learn your lessons in school. But it's really kind of coming at it from the psychology. Like the first time that they did like the 3D conversion test for me, I went, this isn't going to work, guys. It's just not going to work. They did like 30 shots for me, and I was like, I felt overwhelmed. I was actually, feeling nervous about it, right? So I was coming at it from a defensive place. But I said, there's 2 shots on there that are actually really cool, and I'm sad that they're not going to be in 3D. But the rest of them are issues, and I said, I could walk you through it. It'll take us hours, but I could walk you through all my issues with it, the psychology of it. When you did this, the thing I was going to tell you about 3D is that one of the lost, 3D for a second, put that aside, but one of the lost arts of filmmaking is blocking. And again, it's because in the old days of filmmaking, before computers and all, we all had to think of the movies in our head, really visualize everything beforehand, and the editing room was used just to kind of help any mistakes that we made or patch together the original version. But filmmaking has more and more become make the movie in the editing room, and you gather. I kind of break down filmmakers into hunters and gatherers, and 99% of filmmakers are gatherers. Oh, there's berries, there's this, there's lettuce, and that's all that stuff. And let's see what we can make out of it. And then the hunter is, I'm going to get the spotted leopard that lives on the hill. I'm going to ignore everything else that comes by me, and I'm going to get it. I know where it lives, I know how to get it, and I'm going to go get it, and that's what you're going to see at the end of the day. And in the old days, everybody was a hunter, because there was no way to make it in the editing room. You had to think through everything. And so in those days, they would think about blocking a lot. Where does the camera move? When does the actor come into the frame? All the different variables. Like one of my favorite moments of blocking from, not from way back, but is in the movie Poltergeist, where, I don't know if you guys remember this moment in the hallway, where they're calling Carol Ann, and the psychic's in the back, and the parents are in the middle, and they keep coming forward to talk to her, and the camera's rising and going. It's like a 3-minute shot where they're talking to her. It's so emotional, and the lady's saying, yell at her, tell her to come away from the light, tell her you're going to punish her. It's so emotional, and she's screaming, and at the psychiatrist, they're crying, and everyone's moving positions, and the camera's coming back and forth, creating close-ups. and you're just riveted. At the end, the camera pushes by everybody to the little psychiatrist lady, and she says, you know, now clear your mind, it knows what scares you. I was like, that is awesome, that is awesome. Like that thinking doesn't exist anymore, but 3D causes you to start thinking this way again. You immediately start thinking, oh, it's not just, you know, 2 mid shots. You start thinking like Spielberg in that shot again. You go, where does everybody stand? When do they come forward? Also, and that's a really healthy,
That's a good thing.
it's a really healthy thing to do, to think about what the planes are shooting and how to do that.
Well, one of the things I asked you the other day was, when you sit down to write now, and knowing that there is the technology of 3D, do you think differently as a writer?
Well, you know, like I'm writing 2 things right now, and one's a thriller, and then one's a kind of a sci-fi thing. And so the question of 3D for the sci-fi thing is really prevalent right now. You know, so this is just pure honesty, the way where my head is right now. So as you know, the struggle of these things, and again, my worry is my aunt again. If I go lather the thing in 3D, I shoot it. I'm saying shoot it in 3D. Whatever you want. You know, forget the argument about shooting or not shooting. This is just about storytelling, man. And you know, I say, look, I'm going to put it on the movie. I'm going to say this sci-fi thing that I'm writing, I'm going to put 3D on it. But I see this movie as Alien, the Ridley Scott movie, quiet and like eerie and horror, and you know, what is that sound and all. But what is my aunt going to think when she sees that movie with the 3D on it, that I shot it in 3D? What are their expectations when the glasses go on? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's something that, and obviously I'm thinking about it really early because I'm writing it right now, and I'm considering it. I wish it was a tool. I wish it was just a tool so I could make that decision, but it's more than a tool. It's a definition of the movie right now. It's a definition of what meal you're eating entirely. And so for me, a filmmaker that makes his living on insinuation and quiet, it's a difficult choice. So I mean, that's just honest.
What about staying away from the thriller, the science fiction? Do you see, and again, I'm talking now that this business is kind of in its infancy and is starting to emerge, and if you follow technology, they always get better at things, and they always answer the question. So going forward, where do you think that it's possible that 3D could go? Can you see yourself doing Sixth Sense in 3D? Could you see doing just a family drama in 3D in the future? I'm not talking about now. Or...
Yeah, that's a tricky one. You know, it's fascinating. You know, you didn't quite ask me this question, but my mind's going all over the place. You know, as I watch the movies that come out in 3D, again, let's put aside the conversion versus shooting issue. It's a fascinating thing that I'm seeing, like the marketplace is kind of recalibrating a little bit. And I don't know whether it's me or not, but I'm starting to sense a little bit of like the consumer going, you know, I might have seen that movie, it kind of interests me, but I don't think it's worth the 3D money. I don't know if I'm seeing that, like I'm reading that into the numbers, and I'm making that up in my own head, but they're making another decision which they never made before. When every movie was the same price, and every experience was the same price, that was the great equalizer. You never had to put in, is it worth the value, into the equation. And I don't know why I'm feeling that, but I feel just a tinge of that coming into the marketplace now. Is it worth, you know, just like when you sell DVDs and Blu-ray sells a certain amount, but most people just want to know they're getting their value, so they go for the DVD. It's a fascinating, I wonder if that's happening now. So the big movies, the pirates and all, yeah, that's worth it, you know? I'll pay the money, let's go, you know? But I wonder if, you know, I'm an unknown filmmaker, I'm making a genre that's usually a straight-to-video genre in horror. I mean, it's hard to go back in time before then, but, you know, and I make it in 3D. I don't know, I don't know, it's an interesting way. I like the variations in it. Once it becomes the variants, we can see different qualities. Like if someone could make a thriller where they only used it 4 times, and it was in the third act where the woman goes psychotic and starts to imagine things. And only in that sequence did you feel the negative space 3D. And that's it. And audience start to get used to that. Oh, it's used all in different ways. And changes the expectations of the glasses. And I'm hopeful that that can happen. And once that happens, the variations, then it could be a less stigmatizing, not stigma, that's a strong word, defining thing.
I sit in a movie theater. I've worn glasses since I was 10 years old. I sit in a movie theater and I never think to myself I have glasses on. And the same as when I watched Avatar. There was a point in time where, and all of 3D I've seen, at some point in time I even forget I have them on.
Yeah.
So much has been made in the last 2 days about the glasses as though they are in and of themselves the one thing that's the defining difference. And yet people wear glasses, they wear sunglasses, they take them on, they put them off, they don't think anything about it. And if you're sitting there watching a movie and you got a set of glasses on that are not uncomfortable and they're not driving you crazy, why not do 4 scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful, but really, you know, Bob, who comes into the movie theater, comes with this whole thing, with the shoes and this and the glasses. That's you. You didn't change who you were when they put on the thing, but when they ask you to become this version of you, I'm not talking about the glasses themselves are beautiful, this or that, or light, or whatever it is. I'm talking the psychology of what happens to you. When you say, never in the movie, I mean, I get, I wasn't there when they did Smellorama and all that stuff. I don't know about all that stuff. But you know, when they've asked you to do something, to do something different, to change your expectations like that, that's a huge psychological thing that's going on there. And I did this, I mean, I'm not saying I was aware I was wearing glasses when I was watching James Cameron's movie at all. And in fact, I thought he did an incredibly beautiful job of incorporating it. You know, this is another thing, which is, it comes with it such a burden of complications in the storytelling. Like, you remember I was telling you about that movie that was really good, but it kind of lathered the 3D on and it bothered me. It comes with it with such a burden of effort as a storyteller that what if we don't have enough James Camerons that are willing to put in that much time, that much thought into it, care and everything like that to show you the full extent, because it's a beast you got to hold on to, right? And you got to control it, otherwise it's going to define you. I mean, is everybody in this when everyone's like, we got to have it on Memorial Day and all this stuff? Everybody going to take that time to put the extra year, 2 years onto their movies to do it creatively correctly? Because you just added another dimension of thought and thinking and analysis and everything like that. You can't just go and have Robert De Niro and all just do a beautiful performance. You can't just do that when you're doing 3D. I think it comes with it. You're accepting another layer of complications that you need to master, and to do that takes a lot of time.
Are your contemporaries thinking along the same lines, or are there others that are saying, no, I'd really like to delve into it more and see if I can use it more creatively?
You know, I haven't gone around and taken a poll or anything like that, but I think that, you know, it's strange. I feel like the veterans are all saying this is inevitable. This is it. This is the way of the world and all that stuff. And then the more younger bucks are like, I think it's going to be an option, but we're hopeful that it's an option, a great option. And I think that's how it's going to survive forever, is if it's a great option, and not like we're changing every theater to 3D, and in terms of endearment, it's going to be in 3D, and you know, it would be less threatening to all of us, so that I can make my third film in 3D, and you know, and David Fincher can make a quiet movie and then a 3D movie, you know, and we'd have those options. It would feel less like that feeling of selling out, or there's a gun to our head, or we have to, or get on the boat, or it's leaving without you. That all of that stuff that makes us all like, you know, we all get like that about it. I think that all of us who don't have that much experience, let's say, to look back and seen generations change like this in filmmaking, we're wary of it, but you know, interested in it, you know, for sure.
Okay. I could sit here all day long and listen to Night, but I know that I hear some grumbling stomachs out there, but I do think we could ask one or two questions if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Let's get a microphone down here. There's a gentleman right here. Okay.
I'd ask you, given what you said, if you're going to write a movie and produce it, and it just has 4 segments with 3D, if you're writing it, then it's a 3D perspective. aren't you robbing the audience of a full experience if you do that? I couldn't quite
You know my
reconcile that.
aunt, don't you?
Yeah.
This is the thing. The greatest sound movie of all time is The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And it has almost no sound in it. It's just literally, there's no background sound, nothing. They got, Friedkin put there's no tones in it. And then suddenly the phone rings and you jump and, it's absolutely terrifying. And again, that same movie, we hear the tubular bells, right? That score, the tubular bells?
Yeah.
It's in there for 45 seconds. Okay, that is the definition of great artistry. And if I don't have that latitude with 3D, then you are definitely suffocating us as filmmakers. So until that moment, until you don't have that kind of feeling like, hey, you cheated me. You only did it 4 times in the 3rd act. You cheated me.